Is the United States getting played by Israel? I know that makes a lot of people kind of uncomfortable to even say out loud, but just looking at the facts, we have to ask, are we getting played? Are we getting gaslit by especially specifically Benjamin Netanyahu? Now, look, America has been the friend of Israel since 1948. I mean, we've never wavered. Israel has always had this a really strong democracy in the Middle East. It's been a great place to live. They've done wonderful things and amazing things. They're a strong democracy in the middle of an area where there's lots of totalitarianism and lots of violence, and it's been relatively stable over time. And so it's understandable that we would be their friends. We've got longstanding diplomatic ties, military ties, and cultural ties for sure, all the way back. But in the event or in the result of the horrible terrorist attack against Israel on the 7th of October, things have changed. Now, in the immediate aftermath, especially given our 9/11 experience and history, we, of course, immediately embraced Israel and said, you have every right and expectation to go after the Hamas people who did this to you, without question, without equivocation, no asterisk, no nothing, just full-on support. Those things still exist. We still say that the people who did this terrorist attack to you are still valid targets, things that you should go after. Nobody's going to say, hey, you know what? Stop going after the people that killed your people and just let them live next to you. No one would do that in the United States. No one of any party, of any persuasion. However, it does matter how they go about trying to bring peace to their people. You can't just say, hey, I'm just not going to care about the Palestinian people who live in the Gaza Strip. And if we killed tens of thousands of them, so far it's around 23, 25,000, depending on how you count. And it's every reason to think it's going to keep going up because it hasn't even slowed down so far. That can't be okay with America. And here's the point I want to make today. It is not just what's in Israel's interest. It's not just what the Israeli foreign prime minister wants. It's not even what the right-wing government in Israel wants. It's also about America's interest. And we have a definite interest in how this plays out. Because look, our reputation globally and in the region has already suffered. And if we don't turn around things pretty quickly, we may find that the cost to us is far higher than the political risk of actually trying to hold Israel accountable for some things, to putting some strings on some of our support, both financially and politically and diplomatically. It's time that we start doing that, or ultimately, folks, listen to me now, we could be harming Israel more by letting them do whatever they want than by anything that we may try to hold them to. And I know people are just reflexively afraid to say anything to Israel because of 10/7. But if we care about Israel, if we care about their people, if we care about the government, if we care about peace in the region, it's time to do something different while we still can before any permanent damage that's irreversible is done. You may think that that's overblown, that it's really not going to be that way, but I'm telling you, and I'll point out some reasons why that is a risk. Our inaction could be harming both us and Israel. Now, this goes back a long way, and there's actually some, when you look at things in context, and that's one of the things we love to do on this channel, is show things in context, because too many times you go on the news, whatever, and they'll tell you what happened today, what happened yesterday, without context. And sometimes when you just look at what happens in a moment, you can draw a wrong conclusion or have an inaccurate picture of how everything fits together. We're going to fix that for you today. Now, let's start with what happened on the 18th of January here. So just a couple of days back, Benjamin Netanyahu made a public statement to where he directly said, hey, we're going to do whatever we feel is right here. And if we got to tell America no, even though they're good friends, that's what we're going to do. Here's what he said.
For 30 years, I am very consistent, and I'm saying something very simple. This conflict is not on the lack of a state of Palestinian, but the existence of a state, the Jewish state. Every area that we evacuate, we receive terrible terror against that. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, and also Judea and Samaria, which we did it. And therefore, I clarify that in any other arrangement, in the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea. This is what happens when you have sovereignty. This truth I say to our American friends. And I also stopped the attempt to impose on us a reality that will jeopardize us. A prime minister in Israel has to be able to say no, even to the best of friends. To say no when you need to and to say yes when you can.
Oh, just in case you're not clear on the definition of what he's talking about there, when he says say no to America, that's the two-state solution. President Biden has been clear from the outset that as bad as things were on 10/7, the arc of things still has to move in the direction of a two-state solution, because he correctly recognizes without the Palestinian people having a hope, there will be no peace for Israel ever. Let that sink in for a second. I know that everybody wants to say, let's destroy Hamas and then peace will come to Israel. It won't. Because the way you're going about it, where you're killing so many tens of thousands of innocent people, what people on the face of the earth, certainly we're no exception to that. If you inadvertently kill people, or not inadvertently, if you kill people in the pursuit of something that's good for you, but there's all these other innocents in large numbers that are dying, what do you think the survivors are going to do? What do you think that their family members are going to do? They're going to do exactly what they do everywhere, what we have done when our people have been killed without cause, or killed for something that they didn't do. So Biden saying that we've got to have a two-state solution is the right answer. But so far, the Israeli prime minister is having none of it. And to reinforce what he said right after that, one of the official spokesmen for the Israeli government said this on the news later that same day.
We have no good choices at the moment. We have a choice to continue fighting to bring back the people who are being tortured in the Hamas terror dungeons, and to make sure Hamas can never attack us again as it says it wants to do. Or to lie back and say, come on, hit us, let us have it, because that is what South Africa wants. When South Africa applies to the International Court of Justice for an injunction, it is saying, yes, we know that the Israelis were just attacked with a brutal massacre, but they have no inherent right of self-defense in order to protect themselves. We are asking the court to order Israel to abandon the hostages to the rapists in the terror dungeons.
Okay, that's just nonsense. That's just nonsense. That nothing of the kind is, nothing he said there is accurate. That South Africa is saying, yeah, just disarm and let Hamas come. They're not saying that at all. What they're saying is stop killing all these innocent people who had nothing to do with 10/7. You can't keep doing this, because it is angering not just the Arab street throughout the region, even in Western capitals, even in the United States. Last weekend, there were 400,000 people that demonstrated on behalf of the Palestinian people right here in Washington, D.C. And I'm sure that's not the end of it. So that's not what South Africa is saying. And the fact that Israel keeps characterizing it that way means they're going to continue to ignore anything going on anywhere in the world, any kind of pressure that's been brought to bear, which is consistent with how things have been for a long time. Now, the next day, President Biden was asked, hey, Netanyahu basically just called you out and said he's going to say no to us, and there is no two-state solution. And as he was going to another event, one of the reporters asked him, here's what he had to say.
Reconsider conditions on Israel aid, given what Netanyahu said about a one-state.
I think we'll be able to work something out.
What does that mean?
There are a number of types of two-state solutions. There's a number of countries that are members of the UN that are still don't have their own military. A number of states that have limitations on it. And so I think there's ways in which this could work.
But Bibi has said he's opposed to any of two-state solutions.
Say that.
So what is he open to?
I'll let you know.
Did you talk about it this morning?
So what that's reference to when she said, did you talk about that this morning? Netanyahu and Biden talked on the phone for a long time, and the readout of the call said that, you know, they were very firm and talked about tough issues or whatever. So they're asking him, okay, he publicly called you out and said no two-state solution, which you've been publicly calling from day one. And now then you saw Elon there, the spokesman, just reiterate, no, we're not going to do anything different here. So now then they're asking him, is there? Now Biden's trying to say, well, you know, there's more than one kind of two-state solution. So obviously he's not actually sticking to the original, what an actual two-state solution is, i.e. the Palestinians have a state of their own in the territory, which has been the issue all the way back to 1948, which is supposed to have been what's been going on. But he didn't. And so now then so Biden's trying to put a little bit of daylight between by saying, well, no, that's not what Biden said. You saw him on there. That's not what Netanyahu said. He didn't say no two-state solution. It's just the definition. In case anyone's curious, uncertain about how the Israelis actually view that, earlier this very morning, their government put out an official statement that said, in his conversation with President Biden, Prime Minister Netanyahu reiterated his policy that after Hamas is destroyed, Israel must retain security control over Gaza to ensure that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel, a requirement that contradicts the demand for Palestinian sovereignty. Folks, that's as black and white as it gets. It's like, hey, we talked to him on the phone, but no matter what Biden said, there's no two-state solution. Do you see what that's saying? I mean, there's right there, black and white, as plain as can be. The Israeli government at every level is continuing to consistently say, we are going to do what we want to do, and we're not going to listen to you, and we're going to tell you no. So that puts the United States in a really tough position right now. Because does Biden now for a second time get called out publicly and do nothing and say, yeah, we're going to work this out, but then there is no workout? Because whatever Israel says, it doesn't really matter that much. It matters what Israel does. And if Israel is both saying and doing something that contradicts what the United States is, then we have a choice to make. Do we continue to give large numbers of ammunition, weapons, military support, intelligence support, and certainly lots of money so that Israel can do whatever it wants in contradiction to our own values? That's a real question we have to make. And look, if we say yes, that we are going to continue to do those things, and no, there won't be any strings attached, which that reporter also asked Biden. He bypassed that. But again, the actions are what matters. If Biden doesn't put any strings, then he is tacitly either subordinating United States policy to Tel Aviv, or he's just being weak and being walked over. And that's not going to end up good. Let me go back to what I said at the beginning. This won't end well for Israel if they continue down this path. They are building up anger and animosity across the world. And we're not just talking about the Arab world. Some people don't seem to really care about the Arab street, so-called. They're saying, yeah, well, they'll get over it. It's not just the Arab street. And it's not clear, by the way, let's just point this out, that they're going to, quote, get over it. That's already what we're seeing with the Houthis firing in the Red Sea, firing at ships in the Red Sea, and now even American ships, or the attacks on American troops in Syria, the attacks on American troops in Iraq. Those things are continuing to go. And then there's still the risk of an expansion of the war by Israel into Lebanon against Hezbollah, which could potentially draw in Iran. And if they start striking American targets, you can see pretty quick this thing could spiral out of control into a war nobody can control. And if you think the Iraq war was bad, folks, I guarantee you see nothing what would happen if we get sucked into a regional war that includes Iran in addition to all these others. It would be catastrophic for our interest. And if you think that the future of American security is tied to great power status with potentially either Russia or China, the last thing on this planet you want is the U.S. getting sucked into another war in the Middle East that chews up all of our resources, all of our training, continues to have to provide weapons and ammunition to Israel, to ourselves, and to Ukraine. You see where this is going. This could harm American national interest. Make sure you're clear on this. But look, this is not anything new. That's the point. One of the big points I want to make in this video here. There's nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. We've had a long series of American presidents, from President Clinton and Netanyahu all the way through to this current situation right now with President Biden. You see, every one of these presidents have said that we support a two-state solution. None of them have had it. And I'm just going to show you a couple here because there's a couple of real telling points about what happened here and the problem with American policy and why this has been a problem and remains one to this day. First of all, I want to look on, I believe it's March 14th, 2003, from the Rose Garden. President Bush makes this declaration.
I call upon all parties in the Middle East to abandon old hatreds and to meet their responsibilities for peace. Palestinian state must be a reformed and peaceful and democratic state that abandons forever the use of terror. The government of Israel, as the terror threat is removed and security improves, must take concrete steps to support the emergence of a viable and credible Palestinian state and to work as quickly as possible toward a final status agreement. As progress is made toward peace, settlement activity in the occupied territories must end. And the Arab states must oppose terrorism, support the emergence of a peaceful and democratic Palestine, and state clearly that they will live in peace with Israel.
Remember how I told you everything is in context, everything matters about context? Those are tough words by Bush, the great decider. You know, the guy that says you're either with us or against you, and he's tough and all that, right? Those are tough words about both to Israel and to the Arabs. What happened 6 days after that speech, folks? That's the day that we chose to go to war against Iraq and invaded Iraq and Operation Iraqi Freedom is what turned out to be. That consumed the next 6 years of Bush's term in office. And I can assure you, the last thing he cared anything about was what happened to the Palestinians and the Israelis issue over the two-state solution. So great words, no follow-up at all. Now then, let's see who followed him, because this was probably the one best chance that we ever had to actually hold Israel accountable, to actually say, no, folks, both you and the Arabs and the Palestinians, you're all going to work together. We're going to insist, because we have support that we provide really to all of these elements. We're going to insist that this come in. We actually have the leadership, we have the capacity, and the region itself was relatively stable at this time. Now, this speech, which I'm about to show you an excerpt from, was from Obama in Jerusalem in 2013, and there was so much hope and optimism here. Note what he says at the very beginning of this clip, though.
You know, politically, given the strong bipartisan support for Israel in America, the easiest thing for me to do would be to put this issue aside. Just express unconditional support for whatever Israel decides to do. That would be the easiest political path. But I want you to know that I speak to you as a friend who is deeply concerned and committed to your future, and I ask you to consider 3 points. First, peace is necessary. I believe that. I believe that peace is the only path to true security. You have the opportunity to be the generation that permanently secures the Zionist dream, or you can face a growing challenge to its future. Given the demographics west of the Jordan River, the only way for Israel to endure and thrive as a Jewish and democratic state is through the realization of an independent and viable Palestine. That is true.
You see what he said there at the last part was so true. It's kind of a version of what I just said there. There will be no peace in Israel unless both Israelis and Palestinians have peace and a hope. Without that, neither will have any peace and any hope. And that's the truth of it. So Obama was right then. In that moment, our troops had been withdrawn from Iraq, so that was no longer on the table here. The Afghan war was still going on, but that was a separate issue. And certainly in the Middle East, he had the hope of the Israeli people. I mean, again, that was a Jewish audience there. They were cheering loudly for a two-state solution. They actually wanted it, and there was never a better chance. But the thing he said at the first of the clip is what ended up prevailing. He said, now the easiest thing for me to do politically is to just say, hey, Israel gets whatever it wants because of all the support in the United States. And that's exactly what happened. Because this has now become very clear, and it's not anything hidden. This is not any, thing in the dark web or whatever. This is absolutely out in the open. Netanyahu actually the other day was bragging about how he has subverted any kind of a two-state solution ever since he's been in power. And other credible reports from Israeli press have documented all the ways that Netanyahu has subverted any possibility of a two-state solution. So whatever Clinton said, Bush said, Obama said, President Trump said, because when he was in office, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which is something that Netanyahu wanted really bad, in the expectation that there would be a two-state solution, and there wasn't. So Netanyahu, to every single one of these presidents, all 5 of the last American presidents, told them there would be a two-state solution, or rather that the American president said that there must be one, and he nodded and smiled and waved and then did exactly the opposite behind the scenes. That's the truth of it. Doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Doesn't matter if you like that truth. That is the truth. So now that brings us back to where we started this. What should America do now? Are we going to allow, is the 5th straight president going to allow Netanyahu to just do whatever he wants? And at this absolutely the worst time, if the Obama presidency was the best opportunity for peace, things now are the worst that they have been in decades. Probably all the way back to the 1967 war. I don't think the Israeli state was in any more danger than it is right now. And the problem is it's not military danger. Israel's military is the strongest in the region. But by the misuse of it, they could actually lay the seeds for their own demise. That's the problem here. Look, if we care about Israel, if we want what's best for Israel, it's time for us to say, we're going to hold Israel accountable because it's in our interest to do so. Now, whether Israel takes advantage of the opportunity, that does truly remain in their escape. We can't tell them what to do, for sure. What we can do, though, is to make sure our interests are covered. And our interests are not advanced by letting Netanyahu do anything he wants to and say there's no two-state solution. Look, American values, folks, this is American values. If there were any nation on the planet where children were being killed by the scores every day, we would be up in arms. We would be just livid with whoever was doing it. But because of our decades-long blanket support for Israel, somehow we're not seeing the children through the right lens that we see the rest of the world through. But folks, that's the truth, whether your lenses are clouded or not. And the rest of the world does see it. Their lenses are not clouded. And when they see the U.S. overtly give everything, all the bombs, all the missiles, all the support to Israel and do nothing to hold them back and do nothing to put any strings and requirements on it, to take no action when we're towards a two-state solution that will end the killing of the innocent people in Palestine, that reflects on us. Now, what credibility do you think the U.S. is going to have if, say, Iran starts to take action against one of its neighbors? They get into war with somebody and they're killing lots of innocent people that we like in this particular case, and we say, oh, that's terrible, it's a violation of the laws of land warfare. They're going to laugh at us. They're going to say, you obviously don't actually care about that. Or if China and Taiwan get into a fight, and we already know that when Russia and Ukraine, when Russia kills lots of innocent people, which still happens to this day, we act like we're living. Well, no one is going to pay any attention to us. We have no moral persuasion to get these people to take action in defense of human norms, because we forfeit it in places like this. That's what I need to make sure where everybody's tracking here. This is not anti-Israel. This is certainly not taking the side of Hamas, which I condemn unequivocally and categorically as being a heinous organization that slaughtered innocent people. They get no sympathy from me, period. I have no empathy or sympathy for Hamas. Will never have it. What I do have a lot of sympathy for is the people of Israel, the civilian population in Israel, and the civilian population in Palestine. I care about all of the innocent people, and so should every American. This shouldn't be hard, folks. And if Israel is going down a path with our money, with our name, in an area that's not in America's interest, we have an obligation to the American taxpayer to stop doing what we're doing, to start making some changes and saying, we're putting the brakes on, folks. That's what the president needs to do. He needs to put the brakes on this and say, okay, you've made your statement public. You've called us out. You can do whatever you want to do. I don't have any power over you, but the gravy train stops here. And in fact, if there are not some fundamental changes, and if we don't see a genuine path and action towards an outcome that it meets America's needs and in our interest, the money's going to stop. The plane loads of ammunition are going to stop. If we don't do that, then Israel will not change path. Netanyahu is wed to this. He's got decades of action here, and I can just the chances of him changing course are just nearly non-existent, unless he is required to do so because all of a sudden the supply train gets interrupted. Nothing else is going to stop that, and our interests are going to continue to be harmed. It is time for America to stand up for our values, for our morals, and our national interest in the region. All those things are at stake here. So this is morphed beyond just what happened to Israel on October 7th. Now then, our national interests are at increasing risk in the region and in the world, for that matter. Thank you very much for listening today. We remain unintimidated and uncompromised for you. We're going to bring you some really good new shows next week. Don't forget to tune in to some of those on Monday. We got some live shows and some great guests, and you are not going to want to miss those. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe and share to your friends, and we will see you Monday on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.